for someone that's got a good portfolio but can't find work, what do you think they need to do? What's the plan?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, question for you, Grant, do you see artists out there with amazing portfolios that just can't find work? Or do you find that the portfolio is not quite there yet? Just to calibrate this question, is it that portfolio is not quite good enough, but the person doesn't know that? Or that it's a great portfolio, but they're like, what do I do?
I certainly see a lot of portfolios that aren't quite there, and you can sort of see why they're struggling a bit. And no offense, but they just need a bit more work. This person, they actually had a pretty good portfolio, so I was thinking, oh, this is an interesting one. So they've got a good portfolio. Why are they struggling? It was difficult to define exactly why. I think there may be other reasons, but does that answer your question? Right?
Yeah, it does. We're working with someone, good portfolio. And I think one thing there is get someone to look at your portfolio, someone like Grant, but not Grant because he's a busy dude, but someone who can look at it and say, yeah, this is up to the standard, or, you need a little bit more work. It's important to get the truth about where you're at with your portfolio. I think often when people are struggling, when they're good but they're struggling, it's often there's a disconnect in terms of what they're looking for and what they're showing. So here's a bit of a checklist you can go through. First of all, is my portfolio ready? Yes or no. You can get some feedback on that. And then, does my portfolio show the things that I'm trying to get employed to do, or the contract I'm trying to get, or whatever it might be? So if you've got a whole bunch of mechs and robots and aeroplanes and tanks and cars, and you're applying for jobs to work on something that is more organic or environmental, then maybe employers are looking at that and saying, that doesn't quite match up. We need to get something that's a more suitable match. So that's one thing. And then, that's checklist. Am I applying for the right things and showing the right things? And the next part of the checklist is, am I being targeted with who I'm approaching? So if you are looking for an opportunity, you're like, oh, there's a really cool studio or job or contract or gig that I want to get, and you look at it and say, what do they make? Then am I proving to them that I could make those things and I could do it well? And if you're not sure if the answer is yes to that, then you need to go about the process of creating something specifically for that opportunity. And if you've got a good portfolio, it means you've got the skills to do this. You'd need to do it quickly because the opportunity might come and go. But say you do want to work on something that's making tanks, for example, just top of my head, tanks for some reason, then you need to make a tank. You need to show that tank to the people who are looking to hire someone to make tanks. Or if it's characters, you need to make a specific character. Or, anime, you need to make anime, or whatever it is. Or illustration, you need to be illustrating. So you need to show the exact match between here's what they want and I've done that thing. And that's the next part of the checklist. And the final part of the checklist is it's a numbers game. So if you put yourself out there and you get knocked back, that's great. You hopefully get some feedback from that. But you need to put yourself out there and put yourself out there. And I know when I say it like that, people will say to me, I've applied to thousands of things. And partly that's the problem, that if you're doing more of a scattergun approach, I've just sent my portfolio out to everyone. Back in the day, you used to send your demo reel. Here's a CD. And I used to see the art director in studios that had this big stack of CDs. They're like, so much stuff. And if you're just bombing it out there, then you're not being specific enough. You need to find an opportunity. You need to hunt them. You need to contact them. You need to knock on their door. You need to prove to them and prove to them and prove to them time and time again that you've got what it takes. And it might be that after, hounding them for 6 months, they finally say, okay, now an opportunity's opened up, or now we want to give you a chance. So you need to be tenacious about these things and not just sort of throw your portfolio over the fence and hope for the best. You've got to network and got to, knock on doors and actually try to have a conversation with people as well.
Yeah, so this networking aspect, because I think that might be where they perhaps are struggling. I'm not sure, but I got the sort of gist that their portfolio looked quite good, but there must be a reason that they're not getting in there. So what are good ways to network?
Yeah, well, the just building on that as well, what I saw a lot when I was hiring people, working in studios, helping other people get jobs, I'd see a lot that someone would find a job description, an advertisement. Okay, this studio or this team is applying or hiring someone. Here's the job advertisement. Sadly, a lot of the times, if it gets to that stage, the studio already has someone in mind, and they've just kind of put the advertisement out there just to see what happens. And maybe sometimes they have to legally, or sometimes, or a lot of the times, particularly in my experience, those would be maybe the minority of times when you need someone on your team, you go through every other avenue first. Hey, does anyone know anyone? Hey, I know a guy. Hey, I used to work with a guy. Hey, I met a guy at that event. Hey, there's someone. And then eventually you go to HR and you're like, can you do a job description and put it in the local newspaper? And then word gets out there. So don't be afraid to contact places, even when there's nothing being offered. If you've got a good portfolio and you can create something specifically for them. So how do you do that is your question. How do you network? How do you put yourself out there? It's, the main tools, LinkedIn, and wherever art people are hanging out and you want to have a presence on there. So, let's use you as a bit of an example, Grant. I think you're a wonderful, shining example that, you've been working on YouTube content, training people, showing people how to create things in Blender and how to illustrate and how to create models and all that kind of great stuff. I'm sure you get contacted all the time from people saying, hey, can you come and work on my team? So your goal with building a channel was more, I want to help other folks, and less, I want to get contract opportunities, but that's what comes with it. So sometimes if you're a little bit introverted, you don't want to go to networking events. That's a great place to go to. It's really tough with COVID at the moment. Normally I'm like, go to meetups, go to networking events, go to conferences, go, spend a little bit of money and make the investment to go to GDC or go to places where people who are hiring hang out. But it's tough nowadays to do that. But you can do these things online through LinkedIn, through content creation yourself, and through just contacting people directly. There's some people I'd like to work with, send them an email, hop on Twitter, find them on Discord. Hey, I love what you're doing. I created something for you, and be persistent. So really, networking nowadays is literally just looking someone up and just saying, hey, let's talk. That's kind of the way it works nowadays.
Yeah, I suppose looking at the work, I often get asked when I'm far too busy to do lots of freelance work at the moment. But as soon as you start on the freelance path and you get to know people, they want another job. And in fact, the Atlas Empire's work that I've been doing for their one game, it led to another game, and there's far too much work for me to do, really. So it's a case of getting into the industry. It is a foot in the door, the classic phrase. But I think maybe the expectations are a bit high. The portfolio is good from this guy, but I think they need to still get to know people, and people need to be able to trust you in order to move on.
That's exactly it. It's about trust. That's so important. That's why we tend to try to hire people that we've hired before or work with people we've worked with before. It's trust. You want to know that they can get the job done. They're not going to let you down. They're not going to make you look silly. And just to wrap up this thought, a friend of mine who is in Austin, Texas, is a sound designer. And he was saying he's got a ton of contracts at the moment. There's just a whole bunch of work. And it's because he's been really active for a number of years. He's been out there. He's been going to conferences. He's been meeting up with people in person. He's been, working on lower priced jobs. So he's been doing some things just as, okay, I'll keep my foot in the door. I'll do something really good for these folks, not get paid what I think I'm worth, but I'll build up that trust, and then I'll get more work, and then they'll tell me about this person and that person. So it snowballs, it builds up. Don't be afraid to start cheap at the start. Don't get taken advantage of, but don't be afraid to do it on your terms, where you say, okay, I'll do this job for you. It's probably not as much money as I want, but if I do that, I'd like for you to, write a recommendation, or I'd like to be able to use this in my portfolio. I'd like to be able to use this as an example of something I've worked on. So even if you're not getting paid much, make sure you get something out of that you can use to leapfrog for the next opportunity.